is a generous prayer. It's generous because it's all about the other person. Grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. It's all about the other person. And it is intentional. Make me an instrument of your peace. This prayer is generous and intentional. And these are the words that reflect the beginning of our vision statement for this church. St. John's has a new vision statement with 3 parts. And the first part is what I'll preach about today, and then the next coming weeks you'll hear about the second and third part. This church has been intentional about writing its vision that we might truly live into it. And the vision is printed on the back of your bulletin if you care to read along. The vision of St. John's United Methodist Church is to invite openly and accept all persons, to commit ourselves to social justice, outreach, and interfaith opportunities, to grow spiritually as individuals and as a community through education and worship. These are the 3 components, and we'll talk about inviting openly and accepting all persons today. I think everybody here would probably say we're a friendly church. We're always happy when visitors come, and we're glad to include new people in our community. I want to challenge you, though, to see if we are truly generous and intentional about our welcome and inclusion in this church. Do we really go out of our way to receive a stranger? Are we willing to give up something in order to know the other person? Our vision is to invite openly and accept all persons. This is a very inclusive word, all, and an inclusive statement. Behind it, of course, is the motto of the United Methodist Church: open hearts, open minds, open doors. And we've been saying that for some time. And I think we believe it, I hope we do, that we are truly open in those 3 ways. We claim to be open to all people. By adopting this new vision here at St. John's, I think we are actually opening our door just a little more widely. Just a little wider than it has been, because we want to intentionally be inclusive and use that word all. We're saying that all are welcome here, and all means all. It means that we welcome gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, and straight people. All people. We welcome old people and young people. We welcome people with disabilities. We welcome people who dress in old clothes. We welcome people who come from different cultures, different races, different ethnic backgrounds. We welcome people who don't speak much English. We'll figure a way out to communicate together. And we welcome people who've never even stepped inside a church before. We welcome people who walk to church, and we welcome people who drive here in a Mercedes. We welcome everybody. It's a wide welcome. It's a generously open and wide welcome. That means that it's a wide enough welcome that we might even, listen to this is radical, we might even give up our seat. Our sacred seat for a stranger or a visitor. No, I know exactly where most of you sit. Well, there are a couple exceptions today. Isn't this nice? But we tend to be comfortable in certain places. But you know, what if someone were to come in late and have trouble walking? We would want to make a seat close to the door ready for that person. So I hope somebody on an end, somebody would jump up and give the seat away. That would be radical hospitality. Going out of our way, out of our comfort zone, to help someone feel comfortable who might be coming for the first time. Being radical in our hospitality might be doing something as intentional as helping a person find a job or locate a babysitter in town. It might even mean inviting people to lunch after worship. When Jim and I attended worship in Texas for 6 months, the first Sunday we went to the United Methodist Church in Austin, Texas. After church, we lingered a bit because we know how to do church. We know you kind of have to stay around a little to connect. And we were invited to join the choir. And the choir practice had a babysitter who was the same babysitter as the Sunday morning babysitter. So babysitting was taken care of. And 2 people from the choir came up to us and invited us to lunch the next week after worship. We were hooked. We came the next week. We joined the choir and we had lunch and became good friends with this couple. That's generous hospitality, going out of your way. It needs to be intentional, doesn't it? Because it isn't just what we would normally do. It needs to be intentional. It means treating people like family members. And we say that we are the family of God and that this is our church family. But do we truly treat anyone who walks in the door as a family member? Well, I have a family story to tell. When our children, Eric, Seth, and Leslie, were 10, 4, and 6 months old, we had a summer vacation in Flagstaff, Arizona. Jim's parents had a little cabin in Flagstaff. It was a wonderful place to go for vacation because the cabin backed up to a national forest. And there was no television and no telephone even, which to me was just delightful. And the whole backyard was forest. So a wonderful place for children to play. And the game of the year was always to build a fort. Now you know a fort. A fort is just lugging logs together and finding old branches and rolling a stone and piling it up and making some sort of a lean-to structure that you could actually get inside and play house or hideout or whatever you wanted to play. But most of the fun was making the fort. Well, I was with the baby, Leslie, at the cabin, and Jim was with the boys, Eric and Seth, building the fort. And they would go out and they would find some big log and roll it back, and then they would go off one at a time. They'd go off in different directions and bring in the branches and bring in the goods to make this wonderful structure. And as they went out and back and out, suddenly Seth realized he didn't know how to come back. He couldn't find the fort. He was 4, and he was afraid, and he was lost in the forest, and he started to cry. And it was a long time. It seemed like a very long time that we called and looked for him and looked for him. And then Seth heard his brother Eric calling to him, "Seth, Seth!" And he ran to Eric and they embraced and cried tears of joy. He was found. And of course we all were relieved that Eric had found Seth and brought him back to the fort and to the cabin, and we rejoiced. Well, this story has a second part, because 16 years later, after this episode in the forest, our oldest child, Eric, died. We were preparing for his memorial service, and Seth, who was then 20, shared this story. It's the only story he told when we were talking with the minister and preparing the memorial service. He said he remembered when Eric found him when he was lost in the woods. It's such a tender story for us. It's a story of rejoicing, of family being together, and it matters so much to be home, to be found, to be loved.